Player Will.
Welcome back, Visions fans. Ready Player Will here. This is the A2 character review. Brand new unit released this week to global as part of the Nier Automata collaboration. Character a lot of people are very excited for, myself included, so let's not waste any extra time here. Today's review is pretty standard stuff here, the character overview, where we talk about her at a glance and look at some of the major attributes and MA2 upgrades and whatnot, the base and total stat analysis along with some other stat metrics to kind of get a gauge of where her innate stats are. We'll then transition to the report card where we can kind of look at those stats in the context of her kit, the rest of the game, what I think, and then some general thoughts to really expand upon some more ideas there. We'll go through the job itself in terms of the passives, the counters, the job abilities, auto priority. We'll look at her TMR as part of the TMR review, some job-based vision card eligibility, some general optimization pieces, and then some sample builds. And I have two replays to show you as well that I have maxed her, so I do want to be able to actually physically show the results, and then we'll finish things off with Truststones. But for now, the character overview. Brand new ice unit added to the game. It's the unique main job of the Yorha Type A number 2, hence the name A2. They've given her High Dragoon as the main sub job here, and then Spellblade as the other one. She does equip Great Swords, which again, like 3 in a row here in terms of Great Swords getting some love. She's an excellent addition to that cast. She does equip, though, hats, cloths, and accessories, which is just slightly different that most of the Great Sword users tend to equip heavier armor, so she is a little more unique in that regard. She is a machine as a race type, which is very important because it means that anybody using human killer type modifiers in their builds will not apply in the damage calculation against her when she's taking damage, so very honorable mention to point that out. She's got a move of 3 and a jump of 2 as a 100 cost unit, and I do recommend 50 Faith, but I think there's a case to be made for 70 and maybe even 97, depending on the meta you're in, what the rest of the build is, but I'll talk through that when we get to the limit break, because her limit break is really the most impactful place that comes into play. Now for the main job attributes, max range is 6 squares away. She's got 2 AoE and 2 unit res, so very balanced in that regard. From a weapon type resistance perspective, a fair amount of double-digit positives here, but not without weaknesses. 20% to Pierce is definitely her niche, 15% to Slash, 15% to Magic, with the 2 negatives being the 10% to Missile and the -5 to Strike. Now her Pierce res starting at 20, inclusive of some passives, some buffs, some equipment, so she theoretically can get up to nullify Pierce damage, and if not nullify it, you can easily get in the 60 to 70 range without trying very hard. In terms of status ailment resistances, again, not a 97 or 70 faith unit innately, so I'm not terribly worried about these, but should you go up that high, you have 50% to stun, so those of you that are sick of seeing your VV stun you, she is perfect to counter this. 50% to charm and 10% to confusion innately. The mastery ability, they gave her a permanent 20 slash res pen. I absolutely love that, and 30% acquired AP as well. For the dream ability, they gave her 15% to both pierce and magic res, so these are technically inflated. And I'll reflect that now that they're actually 35% to Pierce and 30% to Magic. Sorry for maybe misleading earlier about that, but they also gave her 15 unit res. Overall, really like what they did for the Mastery and Dream abilities. Now for the whole stat overview, base HP, she's right in line with all the other units that have come out this year. 3813 base HP puts her in this higher echelon of units, well above the 75th percentile of all units in the game. Definitely not a weak spot in any measure. The base attack, she's at 425, which I'm going to slightly round up here to put her in the top bucket, just making that cutoff. She is one of the highest base attack units in the game. That obviously bodes very, very well for her total attack, as we'll end up seeing. The base agility, she's also just slightly above the average and basically within the median of base agility. So really not a strength or weakness. She's in a really good spot for base agility. For the base dexterity, also actually just slightly above average here, slightly above that median of all units. I wouldn't necessarily call her an innately high critical rate unit, but it's higher than most that we've seen as of late, so I do like that about her. For the base luck, she's basically within the big bucket of where most characters end up. 179 for base luck. Sure, it's above the median, but she's not really above or beyond where most characters end up being. So overall, when we look at all those charts, kind of transform them into one here to see relative strengths and weaknesses. Immediately off base stats, really no weaknesses. I think all of these are at a very, very acceptable level. When you do include the mastery ability, the board nodes, things of that nature. There's a couple small shifts here. Sure, the attack stat takes a slight step down. She actually gains more luck on average. They gave her 78 luck, which is definitely more than most units get. The HP, very slightly taking a step back, but the agility, that 11 points really salvages things. So even total stats, I really like where she ends up overall. Now for the agility, definitely above average here. in terms of total agility with no passives equipped, which she does have a passive, and jumps her up to almost 87 agility here. She's in a very, very top tier echelon of units that can reach very fast levels should you gear them that way with these vision cards. And if you're bucketing her compared to other units, again, with passives, she is in unique company here in that 87, 89 range. She can definitely skew very, very fast when you build her that way. Now for the crit hit and crit avoid, again, the dexterity, base dexterity being above average, overall net crit rate isn't amazing. It's not bad, but should you invest in some of the dexterity things, she'll obviously benefit proportionally more. So overall crit rate is fine. The crit avoidance rate also fine. Both of these are, I guess you would call average, or really neither strength nor weakness. Now for the accuracy, this is where she does also get a little bit of a leg up, where she innate accuracy is 10% above the average. It's nothing too crazy. It's pretty good, but her main passive that you'll have equipped almost all the time is a free 25% accuracy. That definitely bumps her up here to that next tier of accuracy capable units, and shows she is innately very, very above average in that regard for what her hit rate can be. Not amongst the top in the game. Those characters are still 20 to 30% higher than her, but compared to the rest of the cast, it's pretty good. Now for evasion, maybe just barely evade capable being on that gradient, but the problem is, we'll talk soon about that, ice and great swords really aren't two categories that have a lot of evasion, scaling, vision cards and equips and things of that nature. I think this is overinflated for what her actual evasion would be in the game. Now, for the report card, effective HP overall, going with a B here. No defense, 8 spirit innately, no AoE res, but you can get 12 on a passive. I think it's debatable whether you would have that on, though, but she does have the 15 unit res, and so all things considered, she ends up being in a B tier. It's not oppressively high on the effective HP side of things. And honestly, some of that is actually carried by the fact of the pierce resistance, where in my calculations, I don't have that as a very highly mitigated resistance type, and so since she does have that much higher innate pierce res, I think it's very slightly inflating this, because against things like strike damage, missile damage, she's actually going to take a fair amount more than you might expect based off of this review. That being said, from the survivability perspective, I'm going with an A here. She's got a 50% physical barrier, 35% damage reduction on a large AoE buff. She's got re-raise on her main teammate buff, 30% HP restore, which will generate just a flat 30% HP to herself and a teammate, but she also has a 30% absorb of damage on her 120 ability and access to a 70% magic barrier. Now, not mentioned here, her weapon also gives her 15% physical damage reduction the larger the AoE. That's in addition to this buff, so that is a very substantial way to kind of make up for that lack of AoE res. But yes, there's a lot of things about her survivability that I do like, that I am just going to go for an A here. Now damage, I'm going with an absolute A+. She has great innate penetrations, a massive AoE resistance crush of decreasing it by 60%. That's very, very strong, as we've seen with Helena the Black Rose and Asterisk coming out. She can dispel protect, and she just gets a massively large attack stat that, yeah, A+ for damage. You're going to notice it. Now for agility, also going with an A- here. She's at 81 versus the 78 in terms of just regular agility. When you equip that passive, bumps her way up to 87, and her main buff is another 25% agility, so that A- is not taking this into account, that extra buff. Obviously that's a big factor in it too, so overall agility, she can get to very, very high speeds. The accuracy, I'm going with the B+ here, way above average accuracy. The 120 ability adds another 30% hit chance. There is no guaranteed hit though, so if you are in an evade meta, yeah, you're gonna have to probably go a little above and beyond with the Alex ring and the Esper and a couple vision cards, this and that, maybe the aim stones, to really get her to a consistent hit rate level, but she's far closer to that than most units are. Now evasion, going with a C here, just basically average, mathematically semi-possible, but like I said, I don't think the Great Sword vision cards or the Ice vision cards are really balanced for any kind of evade potential, so I am not really considering that angle. The movement, I am going with a B+ here, a permanent jump +1, and the High Dragoon sub does have access to a move +1 buff. I don't think you'll use that often, so I'm not really counting it much here, but jump +1 certainly is very noticeable on a bunch of these maps. Now the auto ease of use, I'm going with a B here. Easy buff rotation. I do think though some may struggle to hit the ceiling that she can achieve, but you can get pretty easy results. I think the two things really not in her favor, number one, are just picking which passive is best. That's a real debate. We'll talk about that soon. The second thing is being a 6 range away attack unit. There are, bait potentials where people that don't know map topography that well don't really have the right kind of movement and spacing. And I'm actually going to show that in the replay. She can get out a little further than I'm comfortable with. Now she's got some of the bulk to deal with that, but it's not ideal. Now for the game disruption though, I'm going with a B+ here. Scratch that. I'm changing my mind. I'm going A- here. I don't think she's likely going to dethrone Helena and Vivi for the majority of the ranks. I think if you're like like, guild rank 50 and lower, 50 to 200, you're still going to see loads of those characters, but there's a very, very high impact potential. She definitely does well against that team, as we'll see in those 2 replays I'm going to show. And her being a fan favorite, I have no doubt that people are going to play her because they just want to play her. So I'm going with an A- here for the game disruption. Now, for the passive abilities, going for an A here. Exceptional passives. Just kind of a lot to choose from. It makes it difficult, but they are all very, very good. The counter ability, also going with an A here. She got a general reflex. The others are fair, but I always give an A for the reflex. Even though it's only a 15% chance to proc, we've seen how many fights are won and lost based off of it, so I'm still going with an A in that regard. Now, for the overall job and kit, A+ here. I never really give this grade for a job or kit, but it's an exceptional kit, a ton of damage, loads of utility. There's so much to like about what she can do on that main job for a final grade of an A. She's an insanely good unit. We're going to see through it. Stat-wise, she looks great. Kit-wise, she looks great. Now, the thing is, I don't think she's oppressively good. I just think she's very, very good. It might seem like a small distinction, but I don't think you're going to suddenly see A2 ice walls everywhere in the top end of the game. But she absolutely has the tools to compete with all the top-end characters that we're seeing. But for now, let's go on to the general thoughts. Now, slash res penetration options, she gets 20 on the MA2, 40 on a passive, that puts her at a permanent 60. You get another 20 on her weapon, that puts her at 80. I love that. This innate slash res pen with that weapon makes it so that she's a great rainbow potential unit because you don't have to rely on any vision cards to really drive your slash res pen from that regard. Now, for the defense pen, you do get 40 from a passive, which I ironically think is debatable. Those are normally slam dunk passives to put on, but I might leave it off here. We'll talk through why. She does have a large AoE attack that grants her 40 for 3 turns, which I think is very important. We'll talk about that in the abilities. You can get 10 from a Truststone passive, you get 20 from Ultros, or another 10 from an attack Truststone set bonus if you use 3 attack stones, which I'm actually going to do here. I never recommend it, but because she's got the agility passive and she's already so fast, I'm actually tinkering with the idea of attack stones just to kind of like gauge how I can use her other passives more flexibly. Now, the amazing survivability, I have so many bullets here. The re-raise, the 50% physical barrier. She can also seal enemy barrier break potential, which is great for herself and teammates. The 70% magic barrier on her sub-job, 35% physical and magic damage reduction on the larger AoE. There's also a 30% damage absorption on the 120 ability. The Hydra Goon sub has protect on it for herself. She can also siphon health from the damage that she does, and as mentioned, the sword also gives 15% damage reduction the larger the AoE. So there's a lot of things here to enable the survivability, and she comes with great utility, which you kind of don't see all of these things at once, where she does give a 30% heal to a nearby ally after 1 attack. She can dispel both protect and shell on the same ability. It's that 60% AoE resistance reduction, which is massively huge for damage amplification. On that same ability, it's a 100% reduced counter chance to those enemies. She's also dispel courage on a large diamond AoE, and she's got slow and immobilize access on the limit break that can also kind of like attract them together in the AoE. So lots of great utility as well. That utility and the penetrations make her an extremely self-sufficient unit. That's one of the best things you can ask for in this game. She's an amazing addition to the great sword and ice and water elements, where ice and water can overlap relatively well. She's got relatively exceptional AP management, where her weapon will give her a 15% decreased AP consumption. Her main passive that you'll have on all the time is also 25% decreased AP consumption. And the MA2 was 30% acquired AP, so you're getting it on both ends there in terms of the AP. But as we get through the overall job now, the passive abilities, I have all of these boxed off because they're all really good. Now, Slash and Accuracy Enhancement Plus, you'll always have this on. That's the 40 Slash Res Pen, the 25 Accuracy, 24% Attack, and 25% decreased AP consumption. The other ones, I think you can pick and choose. I personally like Hydra Goon Focus because, again, her Strike Res is innately negative. This will put her at a positive 10%, and the Agility of 12% really gets her to a higher bucket where you can use maybe a slower Esper or a different set of Truststones or a TMR that doesn't have agility on it. There's a lot of extra value there in having this passive, but I do think Hydra Goon lore is competitive for the 40 defense pen. You will get another 40 defense pen for 3 turns on an offensive ability, so you can get up to 80 that way. And the resistance enhancement is part of that slash and pierce resistance niche, but the AoE res of 12 is certainly nice as well. I think all these bottom three are still very applicable for where you can use them. I don't think there's a best. I think that's part of the auto ease of use grade, is that some people might struggle to figure out what ends up working best. But for the counter abilities, the perfect evade A2 is the 15% chance to dodge both physical and magical damage. That's my favorite. Preemptive piercer, okay. Magic guard, also okay for the magic meta that we're in, but reflex just tends to be so cancerous. I'm just really focusing on that one. Now for the main job buffs. We'll start with the teammate buff here in the bottom, because this is the one that she defaults to first. It's a 25% agility buff for herself and allies. It also grants 2 effects to self, only herself, that she will dispel haste on enemies, and she will deny enemy barrier break potential. That is enormous. It's also her opportunity to give re-raise to herself, and when she does re-raise herself, she will get agility of 25% and accuracy of 40 for 3 turns. So very powerful should she happen to die and re-raise herself. Now the second buff is the 50% physical barrier. It's also the 35% physical and magical damage reduction the larger the AoE she gets attacked by. So both of these are monumentally important buffs. It's a very important you get both of them off. That's why I offer the word of caution with the range +6, as we'll see here on these abilities. There are 4 different slash type attacks, all scaling off ice. Now, one very, very interesting wrinkle about these abilities, they all scale 120% off her attack stat. What I mean is, each ability, whenever you use them, it draws stats from a variety of different places. Most units that have come out, as of late at least, draw them from places like dexterity, luck, speed. I'll bring up a character like L here, where his abilities scale off attack, dexterity, agility, and luck. That is not the case for A2. This is all off of her attack stats. So that's the primary thing you want to pump your stats into, which you normally should anyway. But from a analysis perspective, you have 2 AoE, 2 unit res, 1 diamond. This is another kind of like a cross-shaped AoE, if you will. Her lowest AP ability is a decrease of crit evasion, so she will do increased damage based off of that. That one's okay. The Rend and Mend plus, though, is really a great ability. It's that diamond that is a reduced courage to everyone in it. It is also the defense pen of 40 for 3 turns. This is very important for her damage output, but it also casts a follow-up ability, A120 Repair for Self. Well, she will regen 30% of her health and 30% of the health of a nearby ally within a certain cone of her. This is a top-tier ability for all of those reasons. Scrapper Slash is a double hit that dispels the Protect and Shell. It's the highest modifier here in her kit. And then Destructive Spiral is that AoE crush, where it reduces AoE res by 60% and the 100% reduced counter chance and the 30% hit rate and the 30% damage absorption. So yeah, ton of utility, ton of damage, all packed into this main job. Nothing not to like about it. And you have to recall, all of these abilities are 40% cheaper as well with her weapon and her MA2. Now for the Limit Break, it's another similar type cross shape, if you will. It's a chance to attract the units in it closer together, which obviously is very nice to line up those AoEs. It's also the chance to slow and immobilize, but only a 45% chance. So that's why when you're talking about faith values, I think there's an argument to be made that maybe you go 70 faith just to slightly enhance the proc rate of these status effects, because both of them are very debilitating. But it's also a 75% slash res debuff as well, where it's the same thing as the AoE crush. It takes their slash res and just reduces it by 75% of whatever that value is. Now, always honorable mention, there are 2 vision cards here that you can use as a greatsword user. One of them is the triple hit that decreases the evasion rate from the Exorcist card, great for PvE, and Wish on a Winter Night also gives her another option for a magic barrier with further decreased AP consumption. I love this card for that ability for many of the greatsword users. Now, for the sub-job, Yorha Type A2, the Berserk mode, this one's okay. It's a consume AP. It's a 70% attack buff, though. It's almost 300 attack total. It also restores 150 CT upon a critical hit. Not the worst buff in the world. I actually like this one a lot. I just don't like it more than the other 2 buffs on the main job, where this is great for offensive potential and turn order and whatnot, but I think the physical barrier and the reduced AoE damage is far more important. But Self-Destruct is a very fun ability here. This will take a fair amount of her HP. It's a typeless attack that also has a chance to stun and a rather large AoE around her. I don't love these 2 enough to equip this as the main sub-job, but I don't hate this as a main sub-job. And it's really because I don't know if I like the offensive abilities on the other jobs more. Hydra Goon certainly has a nice buff here for the protect, defense, and attack, but again, I don't like this more than the main job buffs. And then it's got the spear-oriented attacks here. Stunning Lance is probably my favorite of them just for the chance to stun. But the Dragon Lance Dive, it's the decrease of Pierce res, but this is the only Pierce type attacks in her kit. It's got the cast time on it. It's a couple things I don't like. So I like that it's here, but I don't really anticipate using this in auto PvP. And the Spellblade, I really like this for the magic barrier. Again, if you're using this instead of the other main job buff, but I don't really like any of the abilities here, offensively speaking. Even resist magic, we have not seen this used in auto PvP in quite some time. So I like that it's here. It's a very strong option for some fun builds, but not something I really think is a main part of her average build, if you will. Now for the TMR review, the Yorha combat sleeve, I'll just stop this right here. This is not a great TMR. Yes, it's got a bunch of stats on it. From that angle, I like it a lot, but it's just a generic move 1, jump 1, and a 40 machine killer, which is very niche. This is really more for PvE content or someone running a triple near team or something weird. It's okay, very niche. Now for the job-based vision cards, again, we've seen a lot of these with the Greatsword as of late. I'm still of the opinion that Greatsword cards overall are tough for rainbow teams. I do like her in a team with Astrius, but there is some redundancy there with the AoE crush that they both offer. But A2 is self-sufficient enough that I'm not really worried about a lot of these job-based vision cards and needing them in order to let her run in a party, because she can basically run on her own without any. But her card in particular is definitely a very nice one where, should you put this in the main slot, which it's a main slot worthy candidate, the extra 42 slash attack definitely helps her offensive output. And for Guild War in particular, the 18% elemental chain res is also a nice factor for survivability, where I didn't talk about that yet. So the job-based vision cards, there's really some best synergies here with Staff Black Mage and Staff Devout. That's really my two favorite candidates. Axe and Sword Red Mage are starting to creep up a little bit as other slash-oriented jobs, but Sword Warrior and Sword Knight don't really have enough to really build much, so maybe a little tough, but it's coming together. Now for the general optimization, I do think her weapon's the best one, flat out. The Glacial Crown is an honorable mention because of the slash res pen, but hers already has 20. I don't think the extra 10 is really necessary. I do like the Save the Queen option though for the physical damage reduction, but it's only for 2 turns. I think the overall attributes of her job are hard to overcome, where you get the 20 slash res pen, the 15 slash attack, the 15 decreased AP consumption, and the reduced physical damage of 15% the larger the AoE. So I think it's hard to overcome that. That's my favorite. For the other equips, pretty standard stuff as we've seen. I'm sorry, ignore those. Those are outdated because she cannot equip armor. She does equip cloths. I mean, being frank, I think the survival vest is the best. The pod accessory for Nier is one of the best. The Genji glove, and honestly, I think the Alex ring is totally fine. The Alex ring might be one of my favorites, just to really ensure that hit rate. She's got crit rate on there as well. The 5% all element res is certainly nice. I would stick with that. And then the Espers, again, nothing crazy here either. Dark Odin, Bahamut, Odin. I love Ultros for the defense pen. I can't understate that enough. You can play with some other Espers, obviously, but these are the main DPS-oriented ones. And same thing with the TMRs. I don't think she's a strong TMR unit because her buffs in her kit are way more impactful, but really here, just go for the ones that are haste-oriented. And again, I'm so sorry, this is outdated. There are armor TMRs which you can't equip, so sorry for the errors there, but I promise you there's not enough teeth here to really invest time in thinking about. She's not a TMR-oriented unit, just leave it at that. Now for the sample builds, this is where I'm going to highlight some replays. I did a mono ice build here with Fryevi and Howlet. The things in the yellow, I think you can probably swap out with a variety of other things. I have Fenrir here for the magic res and the attack buff for A2 in particular. Freezes is great for the HP and the ice attack that affects the whole party. For the TMRs, I did go for the survival vest and the Diallo TMR, but that's because I'm stacking the spirit stat there still. I am using the attack set bonus here as well. For the passives, I do have the agility one on here, and we're looking at overall stats. You're talking about 11,000 HP, 32 defense, 38 spirit, 1,800 attack, 115 agility is still very fast considering I'm using the attack set bonus, not the agility set bonus. The move of 3, jump of 2. She's got 60 unit res in this build, 20 AoE res, 100% acquired AP, so all AP is doubled, which generates it. The 75% stun res, you love to see. That means that VV will not stun her at all. 92 ice attack on the modifiers, 15 slash attack, 27 human killer. She's got 40 defense pen here because of the Ultros Esper and what I've done with the Truststones. She'll get the other 40 after her diamond AoE, but 80 slash res pen here as well. Now let's roll a tape on the replay. This is a very, very standard Helena VV Raft team that you see in the top 5 in the game. I won't tell you which guild I got this from, but this is a very common wall that you're seeing. And this is the best thing about the ice team. I actually think it's a jank ice team I'm running. I actually think the AI that I'm running is not a preferred AI, but the results still speak for themselves. And you'll see what I mean in terms of jank AI. I think my A2 runs out too fast, too early, which I would like to prevent, but we'll watch the results anyway. And so this enemy team is faster than mine. It does get their turns first, but that's okay. Howlett will be moving here to Fryevia to buff the HP absorb. He gets a magic shield. A2 uses her own a teammate buff on herself because there's no one in range to buff. But you'll notice she's already very far ahead. The track barrier for Fry, definitely nice to get that magic shield. This Vivi is going to haste the Wrath, but you see we're already in range. I don't love that. And she's already moving forward. This, to me, the spacing is already bad, but we're going to watch the power of A2 here. So Howlett uses his second buff here. We're going to see that reflex, as I was talking about, being very cancerous. There it is anyways. Fry is not in range yet to use anything. I do have the limit break enabled. Can't hit yet. A2 coming out, removing the protect and the haste. That's a huge amount of utility right there. Here comes Fry, finally using the limit break. Obviously love to see that. And now the magic damage will be drastically reduced if they could hit her anyway. There's the reflex again that you hate to see. But Helena here, that is 28.99 on the limit break. And that's again part of the Fryevia magic aura. But this is some of A2's natural magic res, where she's up in the 50s for the magic res. So yeah, it does not take a lot of damage there. Howlett's going to come in here, able to attack Helena from the side. Vivi's going to end up reapplying haste because we dispelled it the first time. Decent damage, 4,400 damage from Fry there. And A2 thinking real hard. That's Destructive Spiral, able to regen that health. Obviously, her health pool, love to see it near max. Fry still has her hate enabled here. Taking great damage from Helen of the Black Rose. Howlett doing some work, getting her down to one hit. Would love to see him have proc the re-raise though. But now we're going to get Fry to come here and Cura the team. Basic attack will regen some AP. We're still going to get some turns, so it's not over yet, obviously. Vivi is going to opt for the limit break here, which he cannot stun A2. Very, very strong competitive advantage here that everyone else is unfortunately sitting with their thumbs up their butts. But still pretty decent damage. Mitigated, if you will. You know, not a ton taken there. Howlett's going to do some work here, I would imagine, to kill Helena. A2 is going to do some work to try to damage Vivi. Fair amount of damage there. Regen some of it. Vivi's going to use zone attack here. I believe this is double Darka. Overall, they take that like a champ. Here comes the Cura for the Fry for the sustain. Howlett for 6,400. And then Fry, after that slash in peril, is going to come in here and use an Esper just for fun to finish it. Except for the re-raise, that pesky re-raise I even forgot about. Fry, can you do it? She can do it. So that's the first fight to show off A2 here. Now, obviously, there's a lot going on here with Fry in terms of damage mitigation and the Cura to sustain, but even A2 getting out that far in advance early didn't come back to haunt her. She never really ran out of AP, even being baited all that early. There's a lot to really like about the balance of this team against that meta. Now, for the second one, this is a ice-water mixture, and my favorite thing about this is what Young Eld and A2 do together, where she can prevent barrier break on enemies, which is going to help Young Eld. He can break barriers, which she can't do. He could use some love from a damage amplification perspective. Her AoE Crush allows him to do far, far more damage overall. And then their buffs really synergize really well together, where he can give her AoE res, she can give him agility. There's a lot to like, and this is the kind of team that, yeah, there's some ice and water vision cards that overlap, but you really have to reach back in the bucket of the generic vision cards, like the Ramza card, the Death Machine, the Ifrit, the Fenrir. These are like very true rainbow cards, and in this team, I actually swapped out some of A2's survivability for the Genji glove. We'll see how that affects things. And I also changed the passive here from the agility passive to the attack-oriented passive. And we're going to see how that affects her agility overall. I kept the Truststones the same. Stat-wise, yeah, a step back on the HP, 9,700. A little bit back on the defense, 22, 38 spirit. The attack stat much higher here, though, at 1975. Still has 110 agility, though, even taking that agility passive off. 45 unit res, 20 AoE res. Slight step down in the modifiers, going for the 45 ice attack instead, but she's now up to 80 defense pen with this passive, which will put her well above 100 when she uses that ability. So if she were ever to have her defense penetration reduced, say by Bronwell or Summer Glaciella, her being above 100 defense pen would still keep her close to 100 defense pen. Yeah, I've replayed for this too, and kind of the same thing. This is not a team that I highly endorsed. I would have tweaked this team because the Summer Glaciella gets out further than I would have liked too quickly. But again, it's still good to see the results, even on an offensive team that isn't perfect. And so Summer Glaciella here, she's got her move +1. She's the fastest unit on my team, so she's just going to straight ahead the battlefield. It's the same Helena VV team we just saw, but here you can see A2 moving first. Eld is going to use the area res up and get his own buffs and whatnot there. You're going to see the same rotation from the VV Lena wall because the hate is kind of coming from the same area. A2 is using her main sub buff, which I want to show the difference here, where again, I'm going for a much like higher octane offense A2, where I swapped out the agility passive for the defense pen. I swapped out the survival vest for the Genji glove, and I swapped out the buffs so that she does not use her damage mitigation buff. She uses her 70% attack buff. So we're going to compare results here to see if there's any real big noticeable like damage differences. Glassy is going to break Raph's barrier, create one of her own. Here comes Eld's barrier. Now, fortunately, this enemy team doesn't have a lot of barrier break, but A2 has some great upside where she can prevent the barrier break. So both of these units have barriers. She could theoretically keep them if someone had a break. Well, it didn't matter here, but you get the idea. Now, Vivi's going to attack a lot earlier here because Raph still has her haste on. But now it's gone. A little late to the fight, but that's okay. Eld's going to come in here. CT down. Obviously like to see that. Helena's going to do some good AoE work here. And then Summer Glassy, I think a sure thing. Yep, gets that AoE off. We get the self-heal back. Vivi's got no more limit break. I'm very happy about that, obviously. A2 doing a... Hold on, let me go back and pause on that. That's 8,000 damage on the Helena and 6,700 on the Raph. That's a lot of damage. So it immediately brings both of them to re-raise. Getting that AoE from Raph and the debuffs. There's a fair amount of damage from Vivi. The courage is gone from Helena. So again, not a perfect clean fight. But here comes Eld. Nice double hit there. Fair amount of damage. Helena's at least dead. Obviously, this fight looks great in my favor. That's a fair amount of damage taken, though, from Vivi. 7,900, obviously very close to dying. But again, we're trading off a couple things here. Not having the survivability buff. That would reduce this number alone by 35%. So you're talking, what, 2,400 damage less, maybe more. But still alive, at the very least. And so AT is going to do some work now. Destructive Spiral, able to kill both of them. Vivi will revase, but fortunately Eld will come in here and finish the job. Bam, basic attack, see you later. So not the cleanest fight. Obviously lost Summer Glaciella early, but that's the kind of thing I put this team together on a whim. The fact that it's still 3-0'd, I'm pretty happy with, even going for a much higher like octane offense A2 in this build. So for Truststones, left side, I think HP, Spirit, and Defense are all good. The Spirit and Defense are nice for the 30% self-heal and teammate heal. That'll be amplified because of the healing power. Same thing for her absorption ability. So that's my preference personally. The right side, I think the agility, the aim, or the attack set bonus. I never recommend attack. She's one of the few units where I think the stars align and it's worth it. But the agility and the aim are probably very often used as well. For the passives, a little difficult to think through. I struggled with this. The attack 20%, defense pen 10, I think for certain, both those at all times. Ice attack 10, I really like. Acquired AP of 20%. I also like maybe a little overkill because of what she has innately. That might be the one that I sub out because other than that, I have the crit rate 10 and the healing power 10. Now, the acquired AP, could I sub that out for the crit damage or the dexterity of 15? I think the answer is yes. I don't think it's a strong case though. And the reaction block of 20, although I really like this, her 120 ability is a 100% reduced counter chance. So the fact that she's going to use that half the time means that the 20 reaction block probably doesn't matter because everyone's going to be at 100% reduction anyway, but she maybe doesn't use that ability first. Maybe someone's not in it on the first hit. But I think generally speaking, these 6 that I've shown are within the ballpark. Just an honorable mention on equipment, though. This is the black box accessory that's coming out in a week from now that's grindable. And the buffs to A2 here, it's very difficult to read on wotv stats, but it's Magic Res of 10 and Pierce Res of 10 for everybody that ever equips this. But for A2 in particular, it's 15% debuff weakening and an extra 10% physical damage output. Absolutely awesome for what you like to see for kind of like a survivability and an offensive balance. That, yeah, absolutely awesome accessory for her. Just want to honorably mention that. But that's the A2 review in a nutshell. This is a very fun character, an amazing addition to the Ice Cast, an amazing addition for the Greatsword class. This is kind of one of those characters with a little bit of the roll compression of the, self-heal and the heal to teammates, some of the utility she brings that most of the Greatsword units don't have, that she's going to be a staple of them for quite some time. Gumi did a great job designing this unit, and for those of you that have pulled, enjoy using her. I'm sure we'll see a lot of her, but that's it for now. Thanks for watching. See y'all soon.